Students, welcome to another Mr. Ness screencast. Today's aim is urban problems, and here are your objectives. Please pause the video, look these questions over, and get ready to copy some vocab terms and take some notes. Today, you will learn about examples of urban problems, problems that affect people living in cities. And the first one is called urban decay. Urban decay, also called urban blight, is the loss of basic services in a city due to a lack of investment. And that means that the city is not providing a lot of money for services like trash collection, street repair, or public safety. And residents or landlords don't have the money to maintain houses and buildings. Urban decay is associated with concentrated poverty and high unemployment. Blighted neighborhoods have poor sanitation, abandoned buildings, and high crime, among other issues. Urban decay was common in cities of developed countries starting in the 1960s, and although some cities like New York and London have much less urban decay today than they did in past decades, urban decay is still a problem in many cities. This picture on the left shows New York City in the 1980s, and the picture on the right shows Detroit, Michigan in the modern day. Look at the pictures and think about the visual characteristics of urban decay. What does urban decay look like? Now let's look at some causes of urban decay. In other words, what causes cities to lose funding for public services? One cause is deindustrialization, the loss of industry and jobs from a region. Deindustrialization was common after 1970 as the global economy transitioned to post-Fordism and companies began offshoring their factories. Deindustrialization leads to a loss of jobs, high unemployment, and poverty. Without a strong tax base, there is not enough money to fund basic services in the city. A direct effect of deindustrialization, and something that also contributes to urban blight, are what are called brownfields. Brownfields are abandoned, formerly industrial areas that are contaminated by hazardous pollution or toxic waste. They are found in formerly industrial areas of cities that have experienced deindustrialization. The U.S. government designates the most contaminated brownfields as Superfund sites. There are two Superfund sites in Brooklyn, New York, the Gowanus Canal and Newtown Creek. Another cause of urban decay is residential segregation, which you learned about in the last video. Segregation forces non-white Americans who are often poor into specific neighborhoods, leading to concentrations of poverty. Racism also causes services in these areas to be underfunded. The final cause of urban decay is suburbanization and the loss of tax revenues in the city. When white Americans left cities and moved to the suburbs, they stopped paying taxes to the city. All their local taxes now went to their suburb, not to the city. At the same time, businesses and services also left cities, moving to suburban malls where they could be easily accessed by suburban consumers. And this led to huge decreases in city tax revenues. There was now less money to fund services for the people who remained in the cities, many of whom were already poor. Suburbs, meanwhile, were well-funded and had great public services. All right, there's one other urban problem in this unit called gentrification, but you will learn about that in a later video. The last term for today is urban renewal. Urban renewal is the clearing of blighted urban areas in order to build new developments. Urban renewal was common in U.S. cities after 1950 as suburbanization increased. It was, and still is, extremely controversial. For one, urban renewal involves the destruction of entire neighborhoods which, although blighted, are still home to many people. Second, urban renewal has classist and racist connotations, and that's because the people whose homes are destroyed are often poor and often people of color, while the politicians and the developers who undertake the renewal projects are usually wealthy and often white. Finally, urban renewal is controversial because it was done in ways that hurt city dwellers and benefited suburbanites. These pictures below show urban renewal efforts in the city of Cincinnati, Ohio. The circles show blighted neighborhoods that city planners completely tore down in the 1950s, and that meant that everyone who lived in those areas had to leave. The picture below shows what those blighted areas were turned into. If you look closely, you can see that the area on the left mostly became highways, while the area on the right became a stadium and business district. Both of these things catered mainly to suburbanites. The highways allowed them to access the city for their jobs or for entertainment. And after watching the baseball game at the stadium, they can drive their car on the highway back to their suburb where they pay their taxes. All right, it's time to review the objectives. If you don't know the answer to any of them, just rewind the video and look again. And I will see you in class. Bye, students.